The international signing period has opened for Major League Baseball teams, and the Pittsburgh Pirates wasted absolutely no time adding some international talent. Let's take a look at the guys they added today on today's episode of Locked On Pirates.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. My name is Ethan Smith, your host of the Locked On Pirates podcast since 2020, bringing you your news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates from a lifelong fan to lifelong fans just like you. Today's episode is brought to you by the wonderful people over at Game Time. Make sure if you're looking for any tickets to a Penguins game, maybe a basketball game around your area, college basketball with Pitt kind of on the up a little bit in the American Athletic or the ACC. I was almost going to call it by its government name, the American Coastal Conference. Or if you want to go to a concert, AC/DC will be here soon. Comedy show. You can do all that with Game Time, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase with code LOCKEDONMLB. So the international signing period every year is usually a pretty big deal for this Pittsburgh Pirates front office. Ben Cherington absolutely loves going out and getting some international talent in this pool. And on this show, we're going to talk about the guys that the Pirates got first, and then talk about how Roki Sasaki kind of impacts all of this, because there is kind of a stranglehold that is on some of these teams that are still in the Sasaki sweepstakes. And with these moves, I'll just not even bury this at all. The Pittsburgh Pirates are not going to get Roki Sasaki. I would have loved it. I thought it would have been a splash signing. Obviously, it would have been affordable with the international bonus pool money, seeing as he is an international free agent. And yes, it would have taken up most of the Pittsburgh Pirates' $6.91 million bonus pool or international pool that they got this year. But man, would he have just been an instant impact player and slid into this rotation and unequivocally made it a top 5, top 10 rotation in all of baseball. But with these moves today that we're about to headline, I don't see that happening. And you look at these moves and you always kind of have to take a step back, because this isn't like breaking news stuff. These are not guys that are going to be here in a year or two. These are guys that you're going to be thinking about down the line. But this is also how you can build up a farm system and kind of layer it. I've talked about that on this show plenty of times, with layering your farm system, kind of like what we've seen the Tampa Bay Rays do. The Cleveland Guardians have kind of done that in a pretty good way. And you obviously see the remnants of how good they can be when you layer your farm system in different waves. And right now, we've already kind of seen wave one with this Pittsburgh Pirates team when we saw O'Neal Cruz and Henry Davis and all these guys. Wave two, I consider, is the Bubba Chandler wave. You're going to see that wave come down here soon with him and Termarr Johnson and that slew of pitchers. But with these international signings, I think you have to start with Johan De Los Santos. Now, this is a kid, folks, and Johan De Los Santos that already kind of has ties to the Pittsburgh Pirates, because the Pirates last year got his older brother, Yordany De Los Santos, who is currently the top-ranked international prospect in the Pittsburgh Pirates system. You look at Johan De Los Santos, and this kid looks like an absolutely awesome player at the age of 16 right now, I believe. And he takes up a large sum of their $6.91 million. He gets a $2.25 million deal, and it is one of those deals that you look at as a massive financial commitment to a player like this. He's a left-handed hitting guy from the Dominican Republic. The Pirates obviously have a very good relationship with the Dominican Republic, between the academies that they have down there and the relationships that they have with a lot of these coaches that coach some of these top international prospects. And you look at where he was trained and who he came from. Well, he trained with his family, for starters, because Yordany De Los Santos is his brother, but he also trained with Jamie Ramos, who, if you don't know who Jamie Ramos is, he's one of the higher ups and very solid trainers in MLB's trainer partnership program. So you look at that and you say, okay, check, 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 check. It's a lot of checked boxes. But, you look at where De Los Santos thrives in right now and what he's able to do. He is more of a line drive guy. I was watching videos on all this all morning because I did expect some of these signings to be announced before the period actually opened. Because a lot of times with these, the players already kind of have a verbal agreement with the team that they're going to go to. You just have to wait until the period opens, of course, on January 15th before you can actually do it. Much like a lot of these young players as well, he's mainly playing at shortstop right now as a left-handed hitter, has a very heavy line drive approach, but as his age and his maturity grows, I could easily see him grow some pop. And the run grade kind of up there. So you're starting to think about a guy that hopefully can turn into at least an average defender for his all-around ceiling. You look at the line drive approach, okay, that you can work with that. And that's why I always like to look at these young international prospects and even high school prospects, kind of like Connor Griffin, because you can almost look at them as just like a blank piece of paper that can be molded any way you like. With like Connor Griffin, for instance, yeah, he played a lot of shortstop, but I could also see him be a center fielder at this level as well. De Los Santos, yeah, he plays shortstop, but the Pirates can really mold this kid however they really desire to. He'll obviously probably play in the DSL for a while, but as you follow this kid's career, and the reason I bring this up is because I kind of want people to get into this. I want people to kind of focus on this international signing period because there was a player that a lot of people were particularly upset that got traded this season from the Pittsburgh Pirates, and that was Luis Ortiz, who was a pretty good pitcher for the better part of the end of 2022 and 2024 and was an international signing by this Pittsburgh Pirates team. And that's where some of these guys, yeah, they'll fade out of your thought process once the season begins because they have no chance to really make an impact anytime soon. But it is fun to kind of see them at their level they're at now at 16, 17 years of age versus what they look like when they're 21. It's a really awesome transformation that you get to see. And with De Los Santos, he's the number 23 ranked prospect on MLB Prospects in the international side of things. So you have to like what you see there. And then the Pirates weren't done there. They continued to stay busy. They get Daryl Morel, who's another Dominican shortstop that was very highly regarded. A lot of people expected him to go to the LA Dodgers. And much like O'Neal Cruz, who was an international signing himself to the LA Dodgers before coming over in the Tony Watson trade, Morel's 6'5", left-handed swing. And if you looked at Daryl Morel right now and looked at O'Neal Cruz and just kind of put them side by side, obviously Cruz is going to look more polished and look more of a finished product. But Daryl Morel could be a O'Neal Cruz type down the line when you go and look at them. And that's what I urge you to, is find those videos on YouTube of De Los Santos. Find those YouTube videos of Morel, because you're going to get really fascinated by what these kids are right now and what they could potentially be. Now, not every single one is going to turn out to be this magical player that I could tout them to be, but of course I'm going to be positive about it because there are things to be positive about. He has extra base pop right now, Morel does. He has a powerful left-handed swing. Does that sound familiar? Kind of does. And the arm talent's there a little bit as well. Now, you also go to another infielder that they signed from Uganda, which is pretty awesome. Armstrong Mahuzi. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that name correctly. If I did pronounce it wrong, I will try to fix that, but I'm going to say Mahuzi for now. They get him for $40,000, so obviously a major step down from what you saw in De Los Santos and Morel. But the second player now that the Pittsburgh Pirates have gone and gotten from Uganda, and that's kind of fun. And last year, when I was discussing this around this time, they got David Matoma, who I was raving about as an international signing, and he was highly regarded among a lot of different pundits around the MLB prospect community. And last year, he had a .47 ERA over 38 and 2/3 frames in the minor leagues. It's kind of fun, right? And they get their second player from Uganda here, another infielder. Don't know much about him, but we'll see what they're going to do here. But what I find interesting about this as well, right now, the Pirates don't really have that Roki Sasaki or, another big marquee number one international prospect. But when you go on MLB prospects, and I did this earlier just to make sure I was right, 12 of their top 12 prospects are all draft picks, which is a good thing. That means that Ben Cherington is doing a pretty good job on that side of things. And from the pitching side, I think Cherington has done a great job at that. But then when you looked after that, starting at 13, going all the way down to 30, which is where MLB prospects does, I was fascinated because 10 players from 13 to 30 were international players that they signed on the market. That is pretty fascinating stuff because, again, it just shows you how many different ways an MLB team like the Pirates, who aren't going to go out and spend a boatload of money, can build their team. They can go out in the international signing market and use this bonus pool money, which was the second most among some other teams and behind a lot of teams in the international bonus pool signing period this year. But when you have 10 guys from the international market breaking your top 30, you start to catch on to those guys as they maybe move up to Greensboro, or maybe they get up to Altoona at some point, and then especially when they get up to AAA Indianapolis and eventually make their MLB debut. Some of them don't ever get to that point, but it is nice to see that the Pirates actively go out and make this an important period for themselves, because they really do put an onus on wanting to kind of use the international signing period as a period to fulfill their need for depth in the system for offense. And that's what they've done here. They've gotten multiple shortstops and offensive players that look like they have some pretty good upside that they can mold into their own very own product, which is hopefully a good one. And that's what you like to see. And that's what I liked about all of this as well. And you saw some success stories, Luis Ortiz being one. O'Neal Cruz obviously started with the Dodgers, but eventually came into being the player that he is nowadays. So you never know what these international signing players could turn into. You never know what kind of path it's going to take for them to get there. But I think it's important to see them right now, see what kind of product they are, and see what kind of product they're molded into throughout their minor league career, and eventually, hopefully, to a major league career that is prosperous as well. There is an international player, though, that I think a lot of people know is a pretty proven commodity in Roki Sasaki. The Pirates have gone out and spent a lot of money already in the international signing period, but they're not going to be the only team that might be thinking, hey, let's upend some of these teams that are still in the Sasaki sweepstakes. How does Roki Sasaki affect this international signing period? Where do I think he's going to sign, and what kind of impact could he have where he goes? We're going to discuss all that next on Locked On Pirates. Today's episode of Locked On Pirates is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, because I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, comedy. I love all of it. One of my favorite moments last year was attending Paul Skeen's debut, because the energy and the excitement were unforgettable, and it will be one of the best moments I've ever had at a baseball game. But Game Time has made it even easier to get tickets to your favorite live events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I was looking for tickets to an upcoming Penguins game using the Game Time app. With Game Time Picks, I found amazing deals and could even see the view from my seat at PPG Paints Arena before buying. The super deal was particularly impressive, offering great seats at unbeatable prices. Plus, the app's all-in pricing shows you your total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork, out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off, and download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. And welcome back, everybody, to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. After making this your first listen of the afternoon, make sure you listen to Locked On MLB with Paul Francis Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully, as he covers everything you need to know about the Roki Sasaki sweepstakes, about anything else that's going on in baseball. Where's Alex Bregman going to end up? Where's Pete Alonso eventually going to go? When are they going to sign? Sully will be all over it. Speaking of Roki Sasaki, this international signing period is unlike many of them because Sasaki is just one of those transcendent players that came into this international signing period. And he'll be a starter for any of the 30 MLB teams. That's how good this guy was over in Japan. That's how good of a player he is. And that's how good of a player I think he could be going into this MLB season in 2025. And it's thrown teams into a sweepstakes for the guy. You just recently heard that the Chicago Cubs are out, the New York Yankees are out, teams like the Dodgers, who, they definitely need Roki Sasaki. The Dodgers are in, the Padres are in, apparently the Toronto Blue Jays are in on Roki Sasaki. So you really wonder how this all shakes out. Now, and what's transpired here is, remember, these teams only get a certain amount of bonus pool money. Now, there have been conflicting reports on if it was really all about money for Roki Sasaki or if it was more about fit. Now, the Dodgers obviously would be a great fit for him. He wouldn't be asked to be the number one guy by any stretch of the imagination with the starting rotation that they have. The San Diego Padres could be a great fit. They're another team that's still trying to compete in that NL West and compete in the National League, and Sasaki would obviously help them do that. And then you look at the Blue Jays, and obviously he would be a top guy with that team. So you start to wonder how the fit works. But what really, really is interesting here is, again, you go back to the pool money that the Pirates had, second most. Some of these teams have less. Some of these teams are right up there with the Pittsburgh Pirates in that amount. And that's all they can sign him for. He can't be signed for anything over that number. Now, obviously, I think you can move forward in the future and obviously extend him to a more lucrative contract. But players like Roki Sasaki don't pop up in the international signing period every day. There's not guys that are coming from Japan or the DR and that usually immediately come up and just make this kind of instant impact. Yeah, we saw Juan Soto do it, but you don't see it every single day. And what happens with this now is for teams like the Pittsburgh Pirates, they've now went out and they've kind of undercut teams for some of these guys like De Los Santos and, of course, Morel. And you wonder and look around baseball at all these international signings, and you say, okay, it kind of makes sense now as to why these teams are going out, because they know that they're not in the Sasaki sweepstakes. So why would they even bother continuing to try to pursue that when they can go get more talent elsewhere, while these other teams, these three teams, the Blue Jays, the Dodgers, and the Padres, are still eyeing the Japanese superstar? That's what the very kind of intriguing balance is with this international signing period. And when you look at these three teams that are left, I think most people have kind of just assumed that it is going to be the LA Dodgers, seeing as they got Yoshinobu Yamamoto last year. He was another one of those rare players that came in and made an instant impact. You've seen them obviously acquire Shohei Ohtani via free agency. They've been an big international signing spender and acquisition player year in and year out. And Sasaki, I think, would thrive in LA. The Dodgers are obviously going to be the clear-cut favorite to repeat in the 2025 MLB season, which we'll be getting into FanDuel totals for the Pirates and other teams in the next segment. And when you look at the Padres, I think I would enjoy him more as a Padre, just because I do think that his relationship with Yu Darvish would be very beneficial for his MLB career, seeing as Yu Darvish followed a similar path as Sasaki will likely follow. And with the Padres too, I mean, they are just kind of a fun team. You look at Tatis, you look at Machado, you look at some of the players that they've had. Even, Ha-Seong Kim had a lot of success with the San Diego Padres for a while. And I think that Sasaki could have success there. But if I was to make a prediction on where he's going to go, I do think he'll end up with the Dodgers, thus creating easily the best rotation in all of Major League Baseball, and obviously giving him the most press and screen time that he could probably hope for, because if it's truly not about the money, then he wants to win. And if he wants to win, going to the LA Dodgers would make the most sense. And when you look at Sasaki again, you look at the rumors that we've seen for the 23-year-old, Pirates were never really in on this. I never really expected them to be in on this, and it's warranted. I think I would have at least liked to see the Pirates name pop up in some of these rumors at least once or twice. There is a possibility that they did potentially try to meet with Sasaki and he just didn't show any interest, which is perfectly fine. There's nothing that you can blame the player for there at all. But I would have liked to see the Pirates at least make some kind of effort in trying to get him here. And you consider that and you say, okay, well, that makes sense as to why he didn't get signed by the Pittsburgh Pirates, why the Pirates haven't been involved whatsoever in this pursuit for Sasaki. But again, I do think he'll be an LA Dodger. Now, another thing I want to touch on lightly before we get into the FanDuel 2025 totals is I have been thinking about this rotation, especially with thinking about Sasaki today, that the Pirates would probably benefit from getting a veteran starter again. They've done it in the last couple of seasons where they got Rich Hill, they got Jose Quintana, they got Tyler Anderson, and all those guys ended up being pretty valuable pieces for those teams, albeit the teams were not that great, and ended up being pretty decent trade assets at the deadline as well. And when you look at how the Pirates rotation is shaking out right now and what's going on with this rotation, you have Paul Skeens, you have Jared Jones, you have Mitch Keller, Bailey Falter, I still think you have to throw in that mix as well. But that fifth spot gets interesting because you could have a Johan Oviedo slot in there. Mike Burrows could slot in there. Maybe a Braxton Ashcraft should slot in there. But it starts to get a little shaky in that fifth spot now that they moved on from Luis Ortiz to acquire Spencer Horwitz. So I do think solidifying that final spot in the rotation with a vet starter, maybe a Jose Quintana, who is still a free agent right now and obviously saw success with the Pirates a few years ago with Oscar Marine and the Pittsburgh Pirates. I wouldn't mind that whatsoever because it would give the Pirates a fifth starter that would solidify their rotation, and it would only make your strength even better. And on top of that, you already have all of these minor league pitchers that I discuss on this show quite a bit, like Bubba Chandler, Mike Burrows, who I just mentioned, Braxton Ashcraft, and eventually Johan Oviedo. You wouldn't be pressuring those guys as much to be really a major leaguer right away. Now, you would hope they are, but you're not putting as much pressure on them to do so if you go out and get a Jose Quintana or another veteran starter. So I do think that's something the Pirates could flirt with over the next couple of weeks, especially leading up to pitchers and catchers reporting on February 12th. I do think it would be beneficial to the team. Is it their biggest need? Absolutely not. They still need to go out and get a corner outfielder. We discussed Jesse Winker on the show yesterday. We discussed Randall Grichuk and Alex Verdugo on the show last week. They still need to go out and get a corner outfielder of some kind to fully solidify that right field spot, at least for the 2025 season. Starting pitching, again, I do think it would be beneficial to get a veteran starter, but if they don't, I'm not going to cry to the bank on it. I'm not going to go and sit in a corner and time out if they don't do it. I just think it is something that would benefit the team to do to at least solidify that spot because injuries are going to happen to the starting pitching staff as well. So you want to consider all of those things also. But I do also want to take you guys on a little ride with FanDuel because FanDuel has some 2025 totals right now that, of course, are subject to change, but they paint a picture as to what we could kind of expect from this Pittsburgh Pirates team in 2025. And I'm going to just go ahead and give you some early predictions on what I think about some of these totals. And we'll look at totals all around Major League Baseball over at FanDuel next on Locked On Pirates. And welcome back, everybody, to the Locked On Pirates podcast, the final part of today's episode of Locked On Pirates here on January 15th, 2025. And, of course, we are here. We've already talked about the international signing moves that the Pirates made over the course of the afternoon. There obviously are going to be more rolling in as the evening progresses. We talked about Roki Sasaki and how he impacts everything going on in the international signing period. And we talked about the potential need for a veteran starter on this team, something that I might talk about more in the coming episodes. But I did want to highlight, folks, for all of my betting people out there, that FanDuel already, of course, has MLB futures at the ready for you. And we're going to start with the Pirates first. And I want to start with the win total because the win total, unshockingly, right now is 76.5 wins over under. And it's pretty clear as day why that number is what it is, because the Pittsburgh Pirates, checks notes, have went 76 and 86 the last 2 seasons. So with your bet there, you're basically betting on if the Pirates are either going to be better than they were last year or worse than they were last year. If I were me, I would bet the over here. I think the Pirates at worst will win 78 to 79 games this year, just on the merit of how good this pitching staff is. But also on top of that, they haven't acquired an outfielder yet, but I do expect them to, be it Winker, be it Verdugo, be it Randall Grichuk. One of those guys is going to be a Pittsburgh Pirate at some point. And FanDuel right now is just taking into account that they don't have those players yet. And 76.5 can compare to teams like, the St. Louis Cardinals, who are at 75.5. The Tampa Bay Rays are around that range in the 80s. The Nationals come in at 70.5. The Blue Jays, the exact same one, at 76.5. The Texas Rangers are obviously a lot higher. The Minnesota Twins are a lot higher. The Brewers are a lot higher. The Marlins a lot lower. The Dodgers, I believe, though, come in with the highest at 103.5 for their over-under on win total. And right now, the highest in the division does go to the Chicago Cubs, who are at an 85.5 point clip for their betting total. The Brewers come in second. The Cincinnati Reds come in just a tick above the Pittsburgh Pirates at 78.5 wins, which takes me to the division in the NL Central, where the Pirates are tied for the longest odds to win the division, the NL Central, at plus 900 alongside the St. Louis Cardinals. Not really surprised by their order here of how they have these odds set up. The Chicago Cubs come in first, the Milwaukee Brewers second, the Reds third, the Pirates fourth, and the Cardinals fifth. When you look outside of the Pirates, I get the Cubs. They obviously move on from Cody Bellinger and acquire Kyle Tucker. You still have Craig Counsell as manager, and they have a very talented roster. Nico Horner, Ian Happ, Seiya Suzuki, who they still have kind of made aware that they want to move on from, but he's still there. So if he stays there, they do have a very lethal lineup. I think where a lot of the concerns with the Chicago Cubs come in from an outside standpoint are with the pitching staff. You have the Milwaukee Brewers, who have been kind of the class of the NL Central the last couple of years. They come in second. Obviously, you expect Chourio to get better. You expect Monasterio to get better. They did move on from Devin Williams and Willy Adames. Now, William Contreras and Christian Yelich, kind of the two clear-cut big guys there, but you do expect those young guys to kind of take a step forward, and I don't think the Brewers are going anywhere, because every time I predict them to go down, they don't. Even with losing Adames and Devin Williams, I do still think that Contreras, Yelich, Chourio, Monasterio, those guys, I still think, even Freddie Peralta, I think are going to keep that team atop the NL Central in some capacity. Then you have the Cincinnati Reds, who to me are a very comparable team to the Pittsburgh Pirates in the fact that they're just trying to break through that barrier, and they are plus 500 versus the Pirates plus 900 right now. But if I were me, I think that the Pirates and the Reds are very comparable teams in different ways. The Pirates obviously with more of a strength on the pitching side of things, the Reds with more of a strength on the hitting side of things. You still have Hunter Green and Andrew Abbott and guys like that over there, but the Reds and the Pirates are in very similar spots where they're trying to break through that barrier of being a middling, losing record kind of team that's competitive with everybody. Now, the Reds did that in 2023, but took a step back in 2024. Meanwhile, the St. Louis Cardinals, they lose Paul Goldschmidt, likely losing Nolan Arenado. And if they don't lose Nolan Arenado, I don't see what he's going to really do for them this year, especially considering that he wants to be out. So I'm not surprised there that the Cardinals are ranked alongside the Pirates for last in the NL Central. Obviously, the Dodgers in the NL West are favored. The Atlanta Braves are favorites in the East, but it's very close between them, the Phillies, and the Mets. The AL West is led by the Houston Astros. The Rangers and the Mariners not too far behind. The AL Central is led by the Twins. Again, the Tigers and Guardians and Royals not too far behind. And then the NL East is the New York Yankees, with the Baltimore Orioles coming in second, the Red Sox in third. Now, the last one I want to hit with everybody, of course, is Paul Skeens. He does have an over-under on his strikeout total for 2025 right now at 222 and a half strikeouts. I don't know. There's injuries that could come into play here with a Paul Skeens record total like that. There's a lot that you could see with that. And you look at that number, and it is among the top in all of baseball. I said 222.5. You look at other guys like Zach Gallen only coming in at 169, Skubal coming in at 211. You look at Hunter Green coming in at 162, Dylan Cease coming in at 209. So Skeen's among the top, maybe actually at the top of the strikeout odds on FanDuel. There will obviously be things that come out on FanDuel. I expect that you'll get, of course, as far as who will lead in what stats. Home runs is another big one as well. You can bet on Aaron Judge, Elly De La Cruz, Matt Olson, Mike Trout, Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani. No Pirates available on that right now. And then for the World Series to end it, the Dodgers right now with the best odds to win the World Series, the Yankees in second, Braves in third, Phillies in fourth, Mets in fifth to round out the top five. And right now, the Pittsburgh Pirates have the same odds as the Los Angeles Angels to win the World Series at plus 15,000, just behind the St. Louis Cardinals, the San Francisco Giants, just ahead of the Athletics and the Nationals, the Marlins, the Colorado Rockies, and the Chicago White Sox round out the list. But take those with you right now because they could change, but you could get some action on that stuff over at FanDuel. I do like over 76.5 for this Pirates team because I do expect the signings to come in the coming weeks, and we will be covering those signings here on the Locked On Pirates podcast. My name is Ethan Smith. Find me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates for all of your news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything you need to know about the Pittsburgh Pirates. You can find this show on YouTube and all of your audio platforms because it is free and available to you wherever you get your podcasts. And folks, thank you so much for tuning in. Have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday evening. We'll see you tomorrow, but until then, we'll see you on the flip side.